So, say you stumble across an e-commerce business for sale, and this e-commerce business sells art and homewares on sites like Amazon and House and directly through its own site. So all of the products are delivered from a fulfillment centre, and the site is currently generating 200k net based on trailing 12 months of the last year. Traffic is mostly from paid search, but it's also from organic search and social, and the owner is prepared to sell for a 2.5 times annual net valuation if it's a cash deal. So that's 500k. So you do your assessments, and at this point you're forced to make a decision. So do you go with option one, where you purchase the business and you invest time into growing it? Or do you go with option two, where you keep your 500k and you build from scratch? So a quick show of hands, who would go with option one? So this is part of the problem in announcing to people where you're going with the presentation before you ask questions like this. I think everyone knows where I'm probably going to end up. I mean, there is no right or wrong answer, and I want you to take everything that I say here with a massive pinch of salt, because everything here is just my opinion, and it's just based on my experience. You could have an entirely different experience doing what I've done, but it is just a point of view. So either way can work, but I tend to favour buying, and I'll show you why. So building could make sense, theoretically. So all the products are relatively easy to outsource. Most of the traffic comes from paid search, which is kind of easy to replicate. If any of you have done PPC, you'll know it's not easy right at the start when you're trying to set up new campaigns, but with enough time and with enough patience, you can often use tools like AdBeats and SEMrush to find out what campaigns your competitors are running. The site is built on Shopify, so building something similar is going to be easy. Shopify is, are you all familiar with Shopify? Shopify is like a really easy tool for building e-commerce websites, excuse me. And the idea is anybody can sort of have a site straight out the box that looks great, it does the job. So if you were to pay a designer to customize a Shopify installation, then you're going to have something that as standard is great, but probably is better than 90% of e-commerce sites out there. So a fraction of the 500k that you would have otherwise spent will get you the best PPC people that money can buy. So ultimately, your cost to replicate that site for sale, theoretically, your development or your customization of the Shopify site, let's say 5k. Outsourcing inventory upload and copywriting. If you've ever launched an e-commerce site from scratch, you know what a pain in the ass it can be to get all your inventory uploaded, to upload pictures, to write product descriptions. A really good tip I've found is to hire a copywriter to write product descriptions for your main sort of products, your products that deliver most of your traffic. Launch marketing, establishing campaigns. Let's say you decide to spend 50k on this, so your total cost for replicating this site, theoretically, would be around 65k. Now, it's 65k versus $500,000. It turns out to be a bit of a no-brainer, but as I'm sure you probably know, it's not that simple, or this would be the shortest presentation ever. I've got to stop using pictures of celebrities that reside in the country of the presentation I'm giving. Crazy if Paris Hilton happened to just be walking past and came in and started wailing on me. So let's look at the two options side by side to get an idea of what we'll likely put in and what we'll get out. And bear in mind that I've made some assumptions in putting this together, which I'll go through a few slides in. So this is your first option, this is your build option. So assuming that you have a sort of setup cost of around 65k, which we looked at in the previous slide, which will cover your site design, outsourcing inventory uploading, copywriting, initial setup and marketing. Assuming that your income grows at 40% year on year with no immediate ceiling, in year one, you do 120k. In year two, you do 168k. In year three, 235, bringing your total for those 3 years to 523k. And you sell the asset at a valuation of 3.1 times annual net, which gives you $729,120. So your total value minus the cost of creating the asset in the first place comes to 1.18 million. So contrasting that with the option of buying, when you buy, you're going to spend 500k to acquire the site in the first place, and let's assume you take that same 50k and you put that into launch marketing too. So same deal, assuming that you're getting 40% year-on-year growth. Year one will give you 280k, which is the initial 200k the site was generating, plus an additional 40%. Year two, 392, year three, 548, giving you a total of 1.2 million for that 3-year period. You sell the asset at a valuation of 3.1 times, giving you 1.7 million, and your total value minus the initial cost to purchase the site, 2.3 million. So there's some assumptions in this which I'd like to go over. So the build option generates 120k net from an initial boost of 50k launch marketing, and ongoing marketing spend from revenue throughout the year. So this is loosely based on a real e-commerce site, which did 425k in the first year, 110k net profit, and had an initial spend of 40k on launch marketing. Both examples spend the same amount on marketing and see the same linear growth in a 3-year period. So this linear 40% year-on-year growth, in reality, it's not likely. In reality, you're more likely to get a bell curve where it starts out really slow when you're establishing your campaigns and you're seeing what works. You eventually get some momentum, but then you eventually get to a point where either the market's saturated or the market's just as big as you can go. You start to see more competition come in, and then things either level out or die off. But because we're just comparing two examples, I've kept it linear just to keep things simple. Finally, sales of internet businesses increased by a conservative 24% between now and 2017. So many of these assumptions give the option of building the best chance of success, but even with all the odds in its favour, it's still very difficult for it to beat the example of buying. So, for example, I'd expect the value of an e-commerce site that's 3 years older than another and generating 500k or more net per year to sell for a valuation far higher than 3.1 times net. I think even now we'd fetch nearer to 4 times, yet alone what it'd be worth in 2017. So there are other points as well that this example ignores but doesn't need to use to make the same point. So firstly, when you build, you've got to consider your time. Whenever you set up a new site from scratch, there's always time in minutiae, which I'm sure many of you who set up a site will know. Things like setting up new merchant accounts, negotiating with new suppliers, building a team, managing remote workers, creating systems. These all take time, which you could be applying to an already established system or just choosing to do something else with. Age sites are worth a lot more. The more history you have in a site, the more attractive that site is as a proposition, and the more likely it is to be worth in that sort of period after you've had it for 3 years. Your established site, your older site, is likely to get far more traffic from social, you're likely to get far more traffic from referrals, and you're also likely to get traffic from word of mouth, as you'll have an existing customer base who would have used the site previously and will be around to spread the word. Unfortunately, you won't necessarily get that with your brand new site. And also your campaigns. If you're running a paid campaign, especially on Google with an established site, you're going to see far cheaper clicks and far better results than a brand new site, even if you're bidding on identical keywords and running the same adverts. Google tends to love older sites and gives a higher quality score to any site that's been around and has had a campaign running for a longer duration of time. So you can run this through the Excel Goal Seek scenario tool, and to match the return of the purchased site, the build site would need to generate 230k net in year 1 from the same marketing budget. Now I know some pretty skilled PPC people, but very few who you could give a 50k initial spend to and have them generate 230k net in the first year, which on the average e-commerce site is around 1.2 to 1.4 million in turnover. So in the previous example, buying trumps building, and while the figures are rounded up, they are based on real examples. And in fact, in most cases, buying will win, simply because you're earning twice. You're earning once on the cash flow that the business generates, and you're earning again on the value or the return on investing your capital in that existing business. When you build, you only have one stream of income to earn from, and that's the cash flow that the business is generating. So there are some scenarios when building will win. There are a lot of scenarios when building will make sense, and one of them is you just simply don't have the capital. I often speak to new buyers who have 10k to spend, and my advice to them is usually wait and save up. And most people will nod and smile and pay me lip service, and I know most of them are going to go out and buy something anyway. But if you haven't got the additional cash, then sometimes building can make sense. Personally, you stand a better chance building and using that 10k for marketing than you would buying something that is worth 10k. Another scenario is where you just have the desire to create, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about that sort of obsession with ideas. Sometimes you just really want to put something out in the world, and this is a scenario where I find myself in frequently, where it's not so much about the money, but it's just about the process. It's about going through that process of building something that you own, something that you feel like is your baby, which you can't always get from buying an established site. And sometimes there's just a lack of good opportunities. The previous example assumed that we had a market that would allow enough growth, or that was big enough for the example there to work, and that's just not always the case. If you've been sitting on your funds for a year and you still can't find something worth buying, then sometimes it may make more sense, rather than waiting another year and doing nothing, to just get started and build, and then look for options once you're already there and already established.